Have you heard about James McAvoy's performance in the upcoming film Speak No Evil? He gives new meaning to terrifying and will scare you speechless. The film is filled with teeth-clenching, seat-clawing suspense and will haunt you forever. Be careful who you trust. Universal Pictures and Blumhouse invite you to Speak No Evil, only in theaters September 13th.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.
I'm Amber Hunt, host of Crimes of the Centuries. One of my favorite things to do as an investigative reporter is sift through old newspapers to see headlines about crimes of yore that everyone was talking about, and yet we know nothing about them today. That's why I created Crimes of the Centuries, a podcast that looks at cases that aren't well known today but were huge when they happened. I'm in season 4, and over the years I've looked at all kinds of cases, from the Lindbergh baby kidnapping to the murder of Phil Hartman. Some of my cases are centuries old and were so important and groundbreaking that they actually helped shape our legal system as we know it today. Crimes of the Centuries is under the Grab Bag Collab umbrella and is available wherever you listen to podcasts or at patreon.com/grabbagcollab.
This is Jessica Knoll, host of the new series Back in Crime. If you're a follower of true crime, you're probably familiar with some of the most shocking stories from our history. Horrific tragedies like the Columbine Massacre and notorious criminals like Charles Manson. But what if we were to turn back the hands of time and relive these events as they unfolded in real time? Follow along each week as we take a fresh look at crimes from the past. Back in Crime is available now.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, a device made to get people off cigarettes instead hooked a new generation on nicotine. But has the downfall of JUUL changed the vaping landscape? We'll talk about the latest series from Leon Neyfakh, Backfired, the Vaping Wars from Audible Originals. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca. Want to get a hit off this?
Oh, shut up. Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, you guys are like the first people I've seen in like days. I'm so excited to see the real people again.
Is that white thing on your wrist a watch or is that a hospital band?
It's not a hospital band. It is a watch from my Apple Watch, which has been getting no exercise lately because I was down with COVID for a few days. So it's telling me get off your ass, Laura.
Sorry to hear you had COVID, Laura, but we're so glad that you're better. We honestly are. Moving on. And finally, our captain of all things, just kidding.
Not enough about that.
Yeah.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hi, Rebecca.
So, Kevin.
Yes.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day.
And a labor story that I want to mention as we tape this today. Mm-hmm. Do you know what it is the anniversary of?
Somebody going into labor?
It is the 10th anniversary of the triumphant return of Arthur T. DeMoulis as the CEO of Market Basket. It is the 10th anniversary of the summer of Market Basket here in New England. One of the greatest labor stories in my lifetime. Regional story. I encourage listeners to look it up. My favorite publication that covered it was The Clam, a very regional Gloucester publication. But there's so many great stories about the Market Basket saga. A pair of cousins, a greedy cousin, a not greedy cousin tried to take over the family grocery store chain and screw the workers.
This should have been a podcast.
Worker uprising.
It should have been a podcast, and it should have been called Food Fight. Too bad.
Well, it was a documentary called Food Fight that was made by a documentary filmmaker from Queen AF Exeter.
Yes.
That's now showing on like PBS and things like that.
Yes.
So.
Great labor story though, Kevin, right?
Absolutely.
Anyway, Kevin, it's obviously Monday's program.
Yes.
And we can say that now because we're back to our 2-day-a-week schedule.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a show coming up on Thursday.
What's coming up on Thursday's program?
We're going to be talking about the podcast Drowning Creek.
All right. And we'll finally find out what that's about. We've been teasing it like for weeks now.
We'll find out.
It's about drowning in a creek.
In a creek. Is it really a creek? Or is it
Maybe
a lake?
a river.
Maybe who knows?
Maybe a stream.
Surprise.
Yeah. And we'll be surprised to learn that there actually is no drowning involved in the podcast at all. And a major plot twist. So Kevin.
Yeah.
How have you been?
I've been fine.
We just came back from a trip.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we just came back from Washington, D.C. for the annual podcast movement.
It was not in
conference.
Washington, D.C. It was in National Harbor. It was D.C. adjacent.
That's Maryland.
Yeah.
It's close enough.
We met somebody there that we've known for a long time and have never seen in person.
Ronald Young Jr.
Yes.
Oh.
He gave us a ride from the Washington area to Baltimore.
Far ride.
So he took
long
us,
ride.
yeah,
Oh my God! You went on a car ride with him?
Yeah, we went to lunch and we had a lovely visit.
Yeah, we got to meet him in person. It was as advertised. He is awesome. We love him very much. We love him even more now that we've met him in person. And we also met one of our true crime heroes, did we not?
2 of them.
Yes, we did meet 2 of them. Well, I was thinking one of our longtime true crime heroes and one of our short-term true crime heroes. We met Anne-Marie Sievertson, short-term true crime hero, host and creator of the Beyond All Repair podcast. And we met Zach Stewart Pontier, host of Crime Town and creator of The Jinx. And as I learned, somehow I didn't know this, also made Catfish, the documentary.
Yeah.
Never knew that. Anyway, he was awesome, and I did a panel with them, and it was just fantastic. It was very, very exciting.
Absolutely.
We'll be hearing more about that in the future, right?
I hope so.
All right.
I hope the tape was recording so we can give it to our Patreons, our
see.
Patreon friends.
We'll see. And Toby, how have you been?
I've been busy. So last Thursday, like 4 or 5 days ago, you probably saw in the Crime Writers On feed the trailer for Rip Current, which is a podcast that I've been working for a couple years on. I'm really excited to have it out. The first episode will be dropping this Thursday, and I'll kind of tease that a little bit more on Thursday's episode. I also wanted to let you know that by kind of coincidence, I've been doing a podcast with a journalist whose name is Brandon R. Reynolds called More Like Ancient Failians, which is a Ancient Aliens rewatch podcast that is actually on Amber Hunt's Grab Bag collab, which is you sign up on Patreon and I think it's $5, but you get a whole bunch of cool podcasts, including for the next 8 weeks, More Like Ancient Failians, which has been a fun project.
I don't think you're saying the title right. I think you have to say More Like Ancient Failians.
Well, that's pretty good, Kevin.
Yeah.
We actually we get our guests to do their take on it, and then that's how we put that in the title. Because I might sort of More Like Ancient Failians wasn't quite doing it, so we have other people try it. So anyway, more about all the Rip Current stuff on Thursday.
All right. Well, I can't wait to hear Rip Current. I've been hearing about it for a long time.
It's been a secret hush-hush thing that we've been talking about but can't say on the show. So we're one of these days.
But Toby, you've been deep in the journalism and you've been deep into wrestling with how to do it, different approaches. And I'm just so excited to hear how it turned out. So very, very excited for you. It's like a baby being born in the world.
It is like a baby being born after a 2-year gestation period.
Yes. An adorable,
like an elephant.
Dysfunctional, murderous baby.
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
Exactly. All right. So should we get the show going, Kevin?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's talk about the podcast we're going to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
It was sleek. It had a cartridge system that Bowen compared to the Nespresso. And it came in a variety of flavors. When the presentation was over, the room lit up with applause.
A pair of Stanford students turned their senior project on making a new kind of clean e-cigarette into the multi-billion-dollar company known as JUUL. But a product envisioned as a way to give adults an alternative to smoking soon contributed to a new epidemic of teens getting hooked on nicotine.
The FDA will not tolerate a whole generation of young people becoming addicted to nicotine as a trade-off for enabling adults to have unfettered access to these same products.
Though public outrage, bad press, and legislative action has largely gutted JUUL's market share, new vape products have taken their place, many with dubious quality and questionable ingredients. And while advocates and regulators continue their fight against sales to minors, one controversial question remains unanswered. Is vaping actually safer than smoking cigarettes?
There is the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. Current smoking is definitely the devil you know. And here it's really, the nicotine doesn't bother me so much, but I do worry, I think like everybody else, about the devil you don't know.
From Prologue Projects and exclusively on Audible, Backfired, the Vaping Wars chronicles the rise and fall and rebirth of a multi-billion-dollar industry laser-focused on satisfying customers' nicotine cravings. Hosts Leon Neyfakh and Arielle Pardes go beyond JUUL's cautionary tale and explore the current marketplace. It features an extended interview with JUUL founder James Monsees. It also follows Neyfakh's own struggle with vaping and his quest to learn what the early science actually says about the hazards of the product. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Backfired, the Vaping Wars. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Laura Bricker.
Yeah.
Leon Neyfakh is a liar and a deceiver. I think we learned in the first couple of minutes of the podcast, do we not?
Yeah, I think this is like a whole other side to Leon that I did not know. I mean, we hear right off the beginning, his co-host like listening to the tape. Was that you? Were you vaping?
Leon, was that a vape?
No.
That did really sound like a vape.
I don't vape anymore.
What was that sound?
I don't know. Yeah, I was on my phone for a second.
Don't lie to us, Leon.
I'm not lying.
On tape.
I'm not lying. The phone makes a weird sound sometimes.
He's right up front. I think this is a great tie-in to this podcast. He thought it was going to be his own little secret until he threw away the vape later that day. And so he lied about it. That immediately just reminds me of all the like hiding in the bathroom when you hear about issues at the high school and the middle school and the kids that are vaping at school that are trying to cover it up. So it's like right off, we know he can relate to this. And then we segue into sort of his, complicated feelings about vaping based on his own family's history of smoking. Both of his parents smoked. He picked it up when he went to college. It was, I think at the end, he talked about when his dad and him were like driving to college and it was kind of like this bonding thing. And then his dad died of lung cancer. I mean, I'm sure we all have that friend who's tried to stop smoking, who hasn't, I have a very good friend whose husband has tried to stop many times. Same thing. Somebody in the family died of lung cancer and then they turned to vaping. So I think that is a very familiar story to a lot of people. So that made it very immediately relatable, I think, to, even if you don't vape, somebody that has had this experience. And Leon, man, I never knew.
I loved it that was the opening scene of the podcast. Now, Toby, there's a thing, reporters very often cover things that, they find curious or interesting or, I heard this thing and I want to explore it more. But Leon doing this is like me doing a podcast about whether or not shopping a lot is really bad for your retirement account.
The answer is yes.
He's
bad for my retirement account, Rebecca.
Is that a controversial topic?
I don't know. Maybe I should do a podcast about it and then go to a financial advisor at the end and have them,
says it's fine
and have them answer that question for me. But he really is asking this question, and then there is this incredible moment near the end of the podcast where he talks to a doctor, which we'll get to. But he's like, is it okay if should I just be smoking a few cigarettes instead? Or should I just keep doing this? And he's like, he really wants to fucking know because it's very clear that nicotine is not going away in his life. What do you think of this angle that he's actually involved personally and has a stake in the answers he's trying to seek?
Well, first of all, I think there's a classic thing at the end where he talks to a doctor and then he goes and talks to his mom. So he gets those two different takes. It's interesting because usually he's sort of behind the mic, sort of narrating, all the journalism and stuff, but there's not a whole lot of Leon walking around and talking to people or talking about his reactions to things or whatever. And this was there was a lot of that. And then there's also this whole thing that he vapes and is trying to sort of get a handle on what does it mean to vape, both in terms of like, how did we get to this point where vaping is all over the place, and including that he does. And then, what's the reality behind being a vapor? Like, what are you actually doing to your body? Is it safe? Is it not safe? And I think there's also this question of sort of what does the public think about vaping? Like, how do people generally look at vaping in general than people who vape? It makes it quite a bit different than his other podcasts. I mean, what is this? Probably like his 7th podcast that we've reviewed or something. So it's interesting that it kind of breaks the mold a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're all big fans of Leon's work, and I'd say that this report is totally up to his high standards. But as you guys say, I agree. What makes this different is that sort of the first time he's inserted himself into the reporting. And so that includes, hearing him go along to visits to vape warehouses and these extended interviews that I want to talk about later, and all the personal discussions, like you say, with his doctor and with his mother.
They just think that they can't stop because it's not their fault. They're genetically like that. And sometimes it's true and sometimes it is not.
I just know that if I were to try to smoke one a day, I would smoke more.
Yeah, I see.
And if I vape, I don't smoke at all.
But you vape a lot.
I could tell this was maybe a longer conversation.
This is the way that Leon gets very vulnerable, and we get some first-person stuff that we haven't gotten from many of his previous ones. The closest we had was sort of his banter in the Michael Jackson Think Twice podcast, where you're like, oh, Leon has a little personality there. He's not just reading stuff that he's written. And I mean, we really get to see it. I think Arielle brings out a lot in him.
I think that's great having Arielle there, not as the foil, but as the,
a partner?
Yeah, as a partner. I mean, very often 2 host podcasts, I'm like, they only have the second person for a reason. And then you can just hear him going back and forth. But it is good to have an objective voice there who is not a vapor, sort of riding along and doing this discovery with him, I think, and being surprised at some of the discovery. There is this great scene later in the podcast where they go to a lab and basically like this robot sucks on 5 vapes and all these chemicals come out. Yeah. And basically like that's actually where we discover, spoiler alert for those who don't want to be spoiled, that like vaping may not be that bad for you. That like 4 of the 5 vapes actually contain things that are just in the air around us and, in lesser degrees than is in some of the rooms that we are standing in right now. And one of them isn't great.
Was it called Beach Day or something?
One of them isn't great. And that's the one that Leon loved the most.
Of course.
And Leon only hears the good news. And she is like, dude, I'm really fucking worried about you right now. You were really sucking on that one. So I really do think it's good to have that balance. And also, by the way, I also was very interested to hear about his history as a smoker because I was like, of course he was. That's why his voice sounds like that. There are so many broadcasters who smoke or used to smoke. So many. Or drink whiskey. That's the other thing. It's like there's a very specific smoking sound. I don't have it, obviously, which is why
cancer.
Yeah, it's true.
I would recommend.
That's true.
I'd recommend whiskey.
Yeah, there's a very specific smoking sound that I don't have, which is why honestly I have so many complaints about my voice on the reviews. But of course he used to. Like you can honestly hear it. So Laura, speaking of that undercover operation. They do go undercover. I mean, it's not really undercover, right? They just go buy shit that you can buy.
Well, but I liked this. This is when they were talking about flavored vapes being outlawed in California, and you're not supposed to be able to purchase them. And they're like, well, let's see how hard it is. And they went out and they like go out, and it's like no big deal. It's like going into a pharmacy and just like buying these things and walking out with them. And I'm like, this reminds me of if you live in New Hampshire and you or somebody has gone to Maine or Massachusetts to buy weed. It's the same sort of experiment. It's like, let's see if you can get away with this. Everybody does it. Everybody knows it's happening, but nothing's being done about it. So I thought that was fun. I always appreciate when there's sort of an on-the-scene sort of report like that where it could go either way. But we're going to go test it out and we're going to do it ourselves. And for me, who likes to go on little adventures, I'm like, I totally would have gone on that outing.
I love it. It was like, are we going to get in trouble? Are we going to be able to do this? Of course you are. Yeah, of course you're going to be able to do it. Like 1 million people are doing it. Like yesterday, today, tomorrow.
A little too easy. It's kind of funny in retrospect that we really thought there was a chance we'd be turned away. That the clerk would tell us, sorry, you actually can't buy flavored vapes here in Los Angeles.
Instead, it was as easy as ordering takeout. We walked away with a small white bag filled with our 5 nicotine vapes.
So, Toby, we hear this angle at the beginning that JUUL, who claims that they were never marketing to young people, who claims that as soon as they learned things, they stopped doing them. There's some, in my opinion, some veracity to those claims, some lack of veracity to those claims. But one very damning thing that JUUL did was they, in the pre-influencer days, they found an influencer. This young woman in New York, who, is it Tabby's house, who ran these parties, which, by the way, fascinating scene of a young person who just threw parties every weekend, charged kids to come to parties, infiltrated that scene and then basically paid her to bring young people to their launch event, at which she loaded up her coat pockets with so many JUUL pods that she had enough for 2 years, which, if you think about it, when you heard that Leon went through one a day, it's a lot of fucking JUUL pods. What did you think about that angle? Because that was a pre-influencer thing, and they, did they invent influencing with this marketing campaign?
So, first of all, I kind of wish they had a bonus episode that was just an hour-long interview with her, because I thought she's a really interesting character. The beginning of this, just in general, I got a little worried because a lot of the first couple of episodes, 2-3 episodes, there's a little bit of overlap with that documentary we saw about vaping a while ago. But he gets some different voices, including this young woman. She gets known for having these parties that are safe for people to go to. So she's hip and popular or whatever. And they kind of glom onto this. And there was a New Yorker article back in the 90s or whatever about cool hunters. Did you guys remember this?
Yes. Actually, I do.
So this was even before the vaping thing. It's where people would go and they try and identify cool people around New York City and Los Angeles or whatever, and kind of see what they were doing. And they're like, okay, that's going to be a trend. Hush puppies, I think, were one of the things. Some guy who was sort of a hip trendsetter guy had bought hush puppies at a secondhand store. So people were like, okay, hush puppies are going to blow up. And for 6 months, hush puppies were big. So this is kind of going at it the other way, which is not looking what she's doing, but okay, she's cool, what we call an influencer now, although there wasn't a culture of influencers at the time. Let's give her this stuff. People will assume that it's cool if she's the one who's giving it all away, and they'll start using it. The problem is they're kids, right? You're just absolutely no bones about it saying, you got a lot of kids who really look up to you. Why don't you give them these nicotine pods? And so that's what she does. And that's in addition to this advertisement, which apparently doesn't go too many places, but the fact that they did it is sort of damning enough, where they have models who are actually old enough to smoke vapes, but don't look it. And then they get Terry Richardson, of all people, to do photography. Do you guys know Terry Richardson?
He's some hotshot photographer.
He's a photographer. He was the one who Kate Upton got big, got her to dress up in a bikini and jump up and down while he filmed and stuff. And then later got busted for sex abuse and things like this. But he's just a sleazy dude, and a lot of sort of sexualizing young women, maybe not underage young women, but young women nonetheless. So they kind of started bringing that kind of thing into their marketing. So it wasn't having a hard time quitting smoking, try our JUUL. It was no, if you want to party and hang out and cool people and good looking women and all this stuff, here's how you can do it with a grape flavored nicotine delivery device.
The idea that they weren't trying to market to teenagers, I don't think it really matters, because big tobacco isn't necessarily marketing to teenagers, but teenagers would smoke and they'd get cigarettes somehow. You don't buy cigarettes in a back alley. You buy them at a convenience store and someone's going in and buying them, right? Retailers have to own a part of this too. But the deal is, it should have been foreseeable that teenagers would start, going and purchasing JUUL. And I tell you, that's a lot of money for them, but not a lot of money for you if you join us on Patreon.
That's right.
Because it's very affordable.
Safe.
And safe. And safe.
All the studies say.
I can't say that you won't become addicted to our exclusive content.
That's right, you will.
God.
Because I promise nothing. I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist. I really can't guarantee that you won't be saying, hey, I really want to listen to that Crime Writers on After Show.
It's lit.
We're back, so it's every Monday we're dropping a new after show, and on today's program, Rebecca is going to give us a rundown of her favorite new obsession.
My favorite content.
It's not the Karen Reed trial.
No, it's even better.
It's even better. Should we tease it?
Yes. I'm obsessed, and I look at it almost every day, with The Village's crime blotter. And I'm going to give it a rundown for you. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about The Villages in Florida and what is going on there. It is fascinating. And I believe The Village's crime blotter journalist might be my favorite headline writer in America.
We also have exclusive content like Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. Toby recently did Bright Young Women. That's the name of the book. And who are your guests, Toby?
It was our very own Rebecca Lavoie and Allison Horrocks.
It's great discussion. And what's the next book coming up? Do you know?
It is The Wager by David Grand, a favorite of deep divers, except for Rebecca. And he joins water as things that she thinks overrated. So David Grand and water are on the list right now.
David Grand and hydration.
We also have our podcast, Married with Podcast, in which Rebecca and I give relationship and parenting advice. On the next episode, you ready for this one, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Well, listeners' stepkids invited the other stepkids over. So Let's see how to navigate that.
I love that.
We still have episodes of Rebecca's Readathon. That is the Karen Readathon. And in the latest episode, Rebecca goes over the wrongful death suit that has been filed against Karen Reed. You'll also want to
bars.
Oh, in the bars. Yeah, sure, yeah. A lot of drinking in this story. Also, Laura Bricker has the Leave It to Bricker podcast, and Laura got a Groupon. And what was it for, Laura?
It was a Groupon coupon to play polo, and you get what you pay for. There will be a short addendum because the first episode was not the most positive experience. The second one, I committed a super foul.
Ooh.
So stay tuned for that.
All right. And lastly, you get this great seasonal summer drop that we had. It was Rebecca's game show, Other People's Problems, and the season finale comes out tomorrow, and this is going to be Kimberly and Katie from A Day with Dateline. They're going to go head-to-head, and we find out that one of them, I won't say who, but one of them is really fucking competitive.
They're both really fucking
They
competitive.
really are competitive.
Yeah. Yep, they are. I gotta say it. All right, Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Roe. If you've heard of Ozempic or Wegovy, you've probably heard three things. They're effective, but they're expensive, and they're hard to get. Well, that's where Roe comes in. Through Roe, you can access prescription compounded GLP-1s with the same weight loss ingredient as brand name GLP-1s at a fraction of the cost. Roe has compounded GLP-1s in stock now. If you qualify, your medication ships in just 1 to 4 days. Don't have time to schedule a doctor's appointment? No problem. With Roe, you can see if you qualify from the comfort of your own home. So go to roe.co/CWO.
CWO.
Membership starts at $99 for your first month. Medication costs are separate. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO.
Go to ro.co/safety for black box warning and full safety information. Compounded medication is not required to and does not receive FDA review or approval. Prescription only. The medication must be paired with diet and exercise modifications in order to achieve stated results. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO. Kevin, who's sponsoring us right now?
Okay, we're brought to you by Quince.
Quince?
Yeah, hey, like we're into fall right now, and it's back to school, and so all those short shorts, tank tops, all those, cool linen clothes that would be, those are all going in the closet. You got to get ready for.
It's cashmere sweater time.
It's cashmere. If you're going to go out and get decorative gourds.
Yes.
Miniature decorative gourds.
Decorative gourd season.
Yes, that's right. You got to shift your wardrobe. Luckily, Quince offers timeless and high-quality items that you'll adore, ensuring your wardrobe stays fresh and you don't blow your budget. And remember, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
Yes, they sure are. I love Quince so much, Kevin.
Yeah.
I was actually shopping on Quince like earlier today on my phone while I was editing something. There's something I want so badly.
Tell me.
It's a cashmere cardigan. Of course it is. It's so cute.
But does it break the bank?
No, of course it doesn't break the bank.
Then I'll allow it.
Oh,
I will allow it.
Thanks for allowing it.
Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, along with premium fabrics and finishes. How awesome is that?
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials, like a crop cashmere sweater. Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime. So, Kevin, who's our sponsor for this episode?
Hey, we're brought to you by HelloFresh.
HelloFresh.
Back to school season means shopping, after-school activities, and a lot less time, so skip the meal planning and grocery store runs with nutritious and delicious meals from HelloFresh. They handle most of the prep, too, and they've got great stuff, not just for weeknights after everybody gets home from school. You got great stuff here that we got in our last HelloFresh delivery. Great stuff for kids that you can pack, send it to school with it. Oh, get your mouth.
That is so cute.
Yeah, this is the, I've got the card right here with the directions for kids' cheesy spinach roll-ups with ranch dipper, carrot sticks, apple slices, and tortilla chips. So this is
you can make a little bento box for your kids.
With cute things. So, I mean, I don't think they have sushi that goes with this, but this wonderful meal comes, with carrots and hummus and cream cheese and apples and tortilla chips.
I want that.
Tortillas, yeah, and it's very easy to...
Make that for me.
Okay, fine, I'll make these for you.
So cute.
You're not a little kid.
I don't care. I would eat the heck out of this.
Yeah, this meal also just takes 5 minutes to make.
It's a lunch bunch.
I mean, it's not like in the Breakfast Club where Claire opened up her little bento box and everybody thought it was weird.
Yeah.
People are going to be jealous.
Yeah.
And for a limited time, kids, eat free. So go to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
CrimeWritersKids.
To unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while subscription is active.
Let's get that.
That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
CrimeWritersKids. So, Kevin, who's our sponsor right now?
Hey, we're brought to you by Babbel.
Babbel!
Yeah, hey, we're more than halfway through the year, so let's fast forward to the end. Did you check off all of your dream goals? Are you still daydreaming? Are you still working on your New Year's resolution? This is a great time because you can say, I'm finishing last year's New Year's resolution, or I'm getting ready for the next one, and that resolution's got to be learning a new language.
Oh.
So speak like a whole new you with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that gets you talking. You could go the way of spending hundreds of dollars in private tutors and that kind of stuff, but Babbel, you can get it done in 10-minute lessons.
You can.
Right? And they're designed by people having real conversations, right? So that's the way Babbel gets you talking. It's not like when you were in French class in high school and you had to raise your hand.
Madame Taubert would roll her eyes because I couldn't do it.
Yeah. So, où est le WC? It's way better than that, right? I just,
Je voudrais.
it's way better. Way better than that. Everything is focused on conversation, not vocabulary.
Yeah. La bureau.
Yeah, we're not doing declensions. Okay, so you'll be ready to talk wherever you go.
Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, Kevin, you can get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/CrimeWriters.
Crime Writers.
Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CrimeWriters.
Crime Writers.
Spelled BABBEL.com/CrimeWriters. Rules and restrictions may apply. So, Toby, let's talk about the public perception of vaping. I certainly am one of those people who believed whenever I saw someone vape, ooh, that's real bad for you. I'm going to admit, I fell victim to, all the big headlining news stories about, the teen glass lung thing that I saw in the news and thought just that I didn't really follow it after that. I am fascinated by what they're doing in Britain, and versus the U.S. approach. We're always about this prohibition approach here, right? And how they are literally giving out vapes to smokers because they're like, do this. It's way better for you, and use the flavors because that's the only way you're going to keep using it. And how we're like, don't do anything. Never, 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 never. Bad, bad, bad. Because they know there that it's better for you. So the public perception is fascinating, right? How that's just gotten stuck in our heads, just like for a lot of people, being physically exposed to fentanyl might make you high, just like we learned in the other thing, right? So it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of things going on. Part of it's the public, part of it's the vape industry. I think the fact that the vape industry tried to make it a consumer good rather than sort of a medical thing isn't really the thing, but you don't usually try and make things that are supposed to be helping you health-wise, like look super cool at a party necessarily. But yeah, so I think there's a bunch of things going on. One of which is, again, that idea that sort of a prohibition, or that you're, like Leon's mom says, like you're weak if you can't stop smoking. Like this is
because she did.
And you can do. Yeah, I had a friend who did hypnosis and never smoked again. I agree. There was a whole thing with THC cartridges being contaminated and making people very sick. And then everybody just kind of damned the entire industry, even though it really had nothing to do with the nicotine delivery part of it. It just feels like the industry made a mistake here that in England they didn't, which is we're going to make this so it's appealing to people in general rather than as like nicotine gum or something as a way of trying to get off smoking. And then obviously the high school kids or middle school kids jump on it too because they have these cool flavors.
Right.
So when I was working on at an old job, and there was like a group that was trying to do some things about addressing issues that kids were having in this one city in Massachusetts. For 1 year, they really focused on vaping, like keeping kids from vaping. They put an enormous amount of energy into trying to message about that, and you hear Leon sort of struggling with it at the end, which is like, even if it's not as bad for me as smoking, is this something I want to be addicted to for the rest of my life? But they talk earlier about how people's heart rates go up really fast when they're using these like nicotine salts. Mm-hmm. And that it was like, smoking half a cigarette in one puff or whatever, and suddenly your heart's pounding. That seems to me unhealthy.
Yeah.
You think?
At the end, when the doctor's like, well, you can do this, I'm like, is it just that you're not going to get cancer and die from it?
Yeah, there's no science that shows nicotine addiction is bad for you. There's just no science that supports that. There isn't.
But if it's making your heart increase like that,
but
I
there's no
can't
science
imagine
that
that
shows that nicotine addiction is any worse than caffeine addiction, the addiction itself. But I agree with you that the heart rate increase, the caffeine heart rate increase is also very bad for you. So for instance, I take ADHD medication. If I take my ADHD medication and then have a really strong cup of coffee, like too close to each other, I have a racing heart situation that's real bad. And I know that that's really bad. And so that's not good for you. But the addiction itself is what's being studied, not that.
Have you tried vaping after you take your medication?
So Kevin, isn't the issue here that like, if this is a smoking cessation device, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like that donkey sanctuary in Aruba where they're sterilizing the donkeys. If it's a smoking cessation device,
the Laura's like, what the fuck was that?
The market is eventually going to diminish, and there won't be any more vape users because they're just going to convert smokers, and then smokers eventually there won't be any smokers, and that'll be it. But what's happening is they're creating new smokers by creating something people are starting smoking by vaping. They're just starting vaping. They never smoked to begin with.
Yeah, the way I see it, and I don't want people like going away thinking we're giving vaping a pass and saying, oh yeah, it seems like it's okay, because while the science is such as it is at this really the early stage of this kind of science, doesn't show the harmful effects that we would think, or certainly that you get from smoking a cigarette. It's designed to deliver nicotine, just like coffee is designed to deliver caffeine. That is of concern to some people, to be addicted to anything, meaning that I need to continue this behavior in order to meet my nic fit. We know somebody who was a surgeon who said he was working with another surgeon, and the surgeon, after his long surgery, wanted to just sew the guy up with stuff still going because he needed to go get a cigarette. I know, it's like it's such a nic fit.
Give us the name of this guy off air.
Hopefully he didn't drop the cigarette inside before he stitched it up.
He's like, he's going to, the other surgeon's like, hold on, let me
drop
finish
this up.
Drop a
junior mint in there.
Yeah, don't drop a junior mint in. But The science is such that, you know, it comes down to everybody's got to make their own decision, particularly about nicotine, right? So, okay, fine. You're not probably going to get cancer the way you would if you smoked Marlboros every day, but you have to make the decision whether or not you want to be beholden to the vape because, like you said, the plan would be that we would just like put ourselves out of business. That's what like, Monsees kind of says. Like his vision was that we would kill off smoking, we'd make smoking obsolete, and people would be on a JUUL. And then what? And Leon Neyfakh points it out, like, well, isn't the business model then that they're going to be on JUUL forever?
Yeah.
Which, you know, as a business model, you know, is pretty good. And
they have to create new JUUL users.
You have to, right. Or you just have the ones that you have forever.
Until they die?
You know, we're going to say, the thing is, it's not like cigarettes. They're not going to die from the cigarettes. They're not going to die from the JUUL. They're just going to smoke it for 50 or 60 years, right? If they start when they're 13. So it's still problematic, even though the science doesn't quite back up what a lot of people assume. And look, what we find out from this is that it's not just you and me that are kind of suspicious of that. Like, it's hard to believe. These scientists go to conferences with other scientists, and those scientists boo them.
They don't know. Yeah, they haven't
They're
gotten
like,
the data.
that's bullshit. You know, but that's one of the great things about this podcast. I found it very illuminating.
So, Laura, here's what I heard that I learned, okay? I heard that some of the vapes are relatively safe, but some of them could be janky, counterfeit, completely unregulated, scary as fuck vapes that look like ones that one could assume would be relatively safe.
Escobar.
Puff or whatever that one was called.
Because, you know, what happened was like with that beach day one, like they called the company was like, that's probably not real. I mean, who knows? That maybe it was real and they were just lying. I mean, that's obviously also an unregulated bullshit thing. As we learned, there's a whole bunch of playing around with licensure and so forth. So who the fuck knows? But like, also there's just people buying these things and they could have anything in them. And that to me is the scary part.
Yeah, well, I think that's scary when you're talking about any sort of substance like this. It's like you hear about like the synthetic THC stuff that people can order through the mail. And it's like, that's not regulated. That's why there's a loophole. That's why people are having like crazy situations with things.
Oh, like CBD 8 or whatever it is?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's something 8. And it's like, how do you know which is the real, which is not the real? Does that just put you off from trying it entirely? Is there any way that you can actually know for sure? Probably not. So I think that just for me is scary because you're talking about kids and you're talking about teenagers that are getting this. And it's like now, like most of the teenagers that I hear about through the grapevine that are like buying weed, get it through somebody that goes to an actual dispensary and gets it. But like, think about when people used to get laced drugs and there'd be a bad batch going on. It's like the same thing with the vapes. Like people are getting these potentially harmful versions. And how do you even approach that if this is something that you actually are using for trying to quit smoking and trying to use an alternative? It's like a roll of the dice, like Russian roulette or something.
Yes, although a lot of the young people I know who are getting weed from dispensaries are saying it's way too fucking strong and that the weed from the streets was like...
Meantime, have a JUUL.
We're like,
have a powder puff.
That weed is no longer fun is basically a couple of reports that I've heard. So
don't have to smoke the whole thing, brother.
Yeah, there's options, man.
Yeah. That's why they make the dog walkers, people.
So Toby, Leon broke format in this podcast and interviewed Monsees and did very little editing. Instead of using clips of Monsees throughout the podcast or saying he interviewed Monsees and playing, you know, doing narration and dumping clips, like had us listen to almost the whole interview, just edited for clarity and length. So what did you think about that format and what did you think about what we heard in that interview? Because it struck me that this is a guy who can't get out of his own way in many situations. What did you hear?
Yeah, so I like the episode. I think in his mind, I started with the best of intentions and then a whole bunch of other people fucked it up for me and everybody else. Right. He's not introspective enough, maybe, or maybe he's just deluding himself to take any of the blame. Like he says at one point he's talking about, and I think it might have been an ad campaign And he said that actually it was the mass media was the problem with that, because if they hadn't reported on it, it would have just been something that a few people saw.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they reported about it meant that all these people found out about it. And that's what
God forbid.
Kids. And it's like, yeah, dude, but that's just the way the news works. Like if you do something stupid, or maybe only 5 people will know, but when it makes the news, everybody knows. I mean, that's just... Watergate could have just been a few people knew, but they made the news and then everybody knew and Nixon got impeached.
The reason 99.999% of people know anything about the Vaporized campaign is not because they happened to be in Times Square that day. It was because they read it in a number of major magazines and publications that kept reprinting it over and over long after we had agreed that this should go away.
And you think, what, teenagers are reading those articles?
Certainly a lot more than, our advertising had ever been seen by them.
And then the thing where when he was in front of Congress, when they're like, tell me about your influencer campaign. And he's like, our paying influencers? He's like, Congress was like, no, just your influencer campaign. He's like, I think we're getting out of what I know about. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, come on.
There's a reason why they wanted him to testify and they fought it. Right.
Right. And it's like, as we talked about earlier, look, dude, you had an influencer campaign before there were even influencers. So don't even fucking pretend that now that they really exist, you're not using them.
But did you pay them? That is the question.
I paid them in pods.
2 years worth of pods.
He needed a better PR person to like kind of coach him about how he was going to handle this interview. These fairly, I'm not going to say Leon asked obvious questions because he's a very good journalist, but these are the issues that he should be able to give good answers to, regardless of who asks them. Like, he shouldn't be struggling with them. And he just kind of comes off as being squirrely. A little bit, I felt bad about him, but on the other hand, it did start as like a pretty good idea for smoking cessation. And then it was like, man, we can make a shitload of money on this. Mm-hmm. And then everything kind of flowed from that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Toby. I thought that it was great. And they intentionally broke format. And like Rebecca said, it's a great idea that they didn't just cut this up and like drop his sound bites into like the JUUL backstory episodes. They saved it so it was intentional and strategic. And I think that's in all of the podcasts from Prologue Projects, I can't remember an episode like that. So I thought that was a great use of their time.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by people. I don't want to say men, but I don't encounter many women like this.
We know you're not fascinated by men, Rebecca.
I'm fascinated by people who should know better by now and who can't not say stuff that they shouldn't say.
Why do you keep looking at me?
Holmes?
So Elizabeth Holmes is a very good example. Like, I'm just fascinated by these people who it's like, when you're asked a question, it's okay just to say less right now. Just don't say that. Like, what's the matter with you? Or people who just feel like they must speak in their own defense when it's like, nothing good can come from this. Nothing good.
Well, I think it's a problem of like you're smart in a lot of ways. Doesn't mean you're smart as far as like having a conversation with a journalist on the record.
Right.
Like, those are just two completely different things. I mean, like Elon Musk, I think, is a guy who's just like, oh, I'm so fucking smart. There's no way I'm going to look like an idiot. And it's like, dude.
And he's also not that smart.
As soon as you open your mouth, it all starts going downhill.
Right.
Have you heard about James McAvoy's performance in the upcoming film Speak No Evil? He gives new meaning to terrifying and will scare you speechless. The film is filled with teeth-clenching, seat-clawing suspense and will haunt you forever. Be careful who you trust. Universal Pictures and Blumhouse invite you to Speak No Evil, only in theaters September 13th.
It's easy to see the common signs of transmission trouble.
If your engine revs before it falls into gear.
If it seems to switch gears for no reason.
If shifts are rough, lurching, or clunking.
So watch for the signs.
Because catching it early could mean repair instead of replacement.
And if you do need transmission work, be sure to call
Certified Transmission, the job done right at the right price.
Find a location near you at certifiedtransmission.com.
Have you met All Modern? All Modern brings you the best of modern furniture and decor. And from August 24th to September 3rd, they're celebrating Labor Day with up to 60% off. Update your space indoors and out with weather-ready sofas, elevated dining sets, and fresh decor, all on sale at All Modern. And then get them delivered for free in days. You heard that right. Days. That's Modern made simple. Shop up to 60% off during All Modern's Labor Day sale, August 24th through September 3rd at allmodern.com.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Backfired, the Vaping Wars. It's available on Audible. What do you think, Laura Bricker? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this podcast?
Yeah, this is one of those podcasts, whenever something comes out with Leon, you know, it's going to be extremely well researched and put together in a way. It's almost like a masterclass in a way of like, if I went to college and I was going to take a course on vaping, I would just listen to this podcast, basically. What I liked about this, we had that documentary recently that we also watched about vaping. I appreciated with this, we also heard from the perspective of some of the people that were like, hey, no, don't outlaw vaping and everything. There's a place for this. And here are the people that are trying to quit smoking. I liked that we had Leon's personal connection to this and that sort of begins and ends this podcast in terms of a window into somebody's personal experience that makes this very relatable. And also, I mean, I'm not super well versed in vaping, so I'm thinking of JUUL, and this gave us a very comprehensive overview of all the other companies and flavors and people that were, you know, sending vapes in from China. So I thought it was really well done, comprehensive look at this issue from all sides, not just from the outlaw side, but from, you know, the sides of people that are vaping. So thumbs up from me.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for Backfired, the Vaping Wars?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big thumbs up for me. When we did our top 10 for last year, my number one was his one about Bernard Goetz. So this is just, you know, again, it's excellent reporting, excellent storytelling. The thing that's different that people will hear is you hear a lot more about Leon. It's not really much of a spoiler to say that he vapes, right? So part of it is him looking at his own, you know, addiction and what's the history behind it and what does it mean sort of medically and physically to vape. And you also get a little bit more of like Leon in action doing reporting type stuff, like going places and talking to people in different environments and stuff. So anyway, it's really good. Big thumbs up from me.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm a big thumbs up. Leon Neyfakh has some crappy podcasts. I've just never heard one.
Oh.
This, again, just meets his high standards. Well written, well narrated by both him and Arielle. I'll say that I'm the kind of guy who has looked at this story and always sort of given credence or imagine the idea about JUUL's having good intentions, but this tragic miscalculation because of their hubris. And of course, this series is called Backfired. And so that's how I always sort of like look at that cautionary story. But we've already seen the JUUL story in the Vaping Fix and the Big Vape. And so they have the idea of going beyond just JUUL and seeing where the things are today. And they do a really great job when it comes to also doing the active stuff, getting a little cinema verite. And of course, like you said, Leon Neyfakh is a great narrator and presenter, but we get to see him here in a different space, being way more vulnerable and making this also a first-person, say, investigation. Or this is his journey. It's his journey. And like I said, he won't solve the vaping problem, but he has an opportunity to come to terms with his own vaping. And I thought that was really great mixed in with all the other stuff. So yes, I am a thumbs up.
I'm a thumbs up too. And I really want Leon Neyfakh on a season of Backfired to make the Market Basket story. I really do.
I don't think the stakes are high enough.
The greatest anti-corporate uprising in the last couple of decades. Are you kidding? It's a great, great story. It would be a great Backfired season. I love this podcast, and I just want to give props. I know it's not Leon's necessarily like doing. I really love the Audible podcast listening interface. It's like listening to an audiobook. They're like
That's
chapters.
That's what they do, yeah.
I know, but they're like chapters. There's no credits at the end of every episode, so they just like flow seamlessly one into the next, and they sort of make the podcast to sort of go along that way. And, you know, building the podcast for that interface is just an interesting like challenge, and I think that the podcast is built well for that interface. Also, by the way, props to Audible for creating a podcast player where you can choose your speed by very small increments, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Very, very good if you're in a time crunch and don't want to do 1.5, 1.75, whatever. It's really great. So yeah, this podcast is very, very solid, and it does not go, spoiler free zone, it does not go where these like anti-vape documentaries go. So it's worth a listen because you will learn stuff that surprises you, and I love that shit. I love it. So big thumbs up for me for Backfired, the Vaping Wars. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week.
Crime of the Week!
If you don't think there's enough to watch on Netflix, Max, Prime, Hulu, Peacock, Disney+, Paramount+, and Apple TV+, there's a new streaming service being cooked up. Chick-fil-A is launching its own streaming platform, complete with original programming. Known as much for supporting anti-LGBTQ+ causes and being closed on the Sabbath, as it's known for its chicken sandwiches and waffle fries, the chain restaurant promises a slate of original, quote, family-friendly shows. And yes, the service will be available in homes and not just their dining rooms. Bet Kirk Cameron is psyched by this. At a time when streamers are struggling, Chick-fil-A is not the only food brand content creator to ruffle some feathers. Starbucks and Coca-Cola have launched studios, and ride-sharing service Lyft already has a YouTube-based game show. Chick-fil-A's restaurant business is valued at, wait for it, $21 billion.
That's not JUUL money, though.
Let's see if its new TV channel will be a hit or whether it will lay an egg. Laura Bricker, question for you. What program will the Chick-fil-A channel feature?
Queer Eye for the Straight Guy?
I love it. What do you think, Toby Ball? What program will the Chick-fil-A channel feature?
Yeah, I was kind of in that same vein with RuPaul's Drag Race.
What do you think, Kevin? What program will the Chick-fil-A channel be featuring?
Chick Flicks.
Oh, yeah.
Or The Feather Report.
Oh, all right. Ooh. You went punny.
I went punny. Yes,
nice job,
exactly.
Dad.
Yeah.
All right, Laura Bricker. If folks want to reach out to you and do some counter programming for Chick-fil-A on your social media, how can they find you online?
They can find me at Laura Bricker on Twitter and Instagram.
What about you, Toby? If folks want to congratulate you on the birth of your new podcast, how can they find you on the internet?
At Toby Ball NH.
What about you, Kevin? How can you be found?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
You can find me everywhere on the internet, especially Twitter and Instagram at Reb Lavoie. You can follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers On, but please, I encourage you to join our incredible community and our amazing Facebook discussion group. Find us on Facebook, join the group. All you got to do is answer a couple of very easy questions like, what's one of our names? That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. There you'll get all the great stuff we make, including our book club, our after show, all of it. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the very smart Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement where that electronic crackling sound in the microphone is definitely not a vape pen. Right, Kevin?
It's just our crackling microphone.
Right, Kevin?
Right.
On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of... Clearly, I've been vaping. It's not that bad for you.
Partners in Crime Media.
It's the big sale at Half Price Books. Get almost everything for an extra 20% off this Labor Day weekend. Whether you're on the hunt for collectibles, comics, music, or movies, you're sure to find a little something new or used at your local Half Price Books. Save big with 20% off. Saturday, August 31st through Monday, September 2nd, in-store at your local Half Price Books and shop millions of titles on sale at hpb.com. Offer cannot be combined with other coupons. Exclusions apply.